Alrighty, guys. Heading over to one of our sites here in Central Arizona, and they feel like they're having some money problems. So kind of worried about that. And I'm going to come in and work with the team a little bit, and thought I'd share with you kind of what our steps are for this. So I'll tell you, I think especially if you have employees and bills and people living in your facility, the thought that you will not be able to make payroll or to pay the electric bill, these thoughts are some of the most vicious attacks of the enemy. I'm not talking about missing it. Once you've missed it, you're got some problems. But I'm talking about just the thoughts that you might not make those things can be absolutely horrifying. And I've seen some of the greatest people of faith. I've seen money and the fear of not having the finances to pay ministry bills absolutely wreak havoc on a leader's life. And I will raise my hand and stand first in line and say, that's me. It's been me. Now, after years and years and years of seeing the ebb and the tide, the highs and the lows, the cycles, you do gain a certain footing of trust. But I think with that footing, you're in a new era, and you're just as stressed. So for us, early on, what used to be a couple $100 internet bill for our campus would stress the heck out of me, but we'd make it, or electric bill, we weren't going to get it, and we came through that, and we don't struggle with those issues anymore. But now, instead of a couple $100 bills, we've just moved up to a new level. Like now they're $20,000 bills and transfers that are $50,000 and to make payroll and stuff, and so it's that same stress. And I have a sneaking suspicion that even if we overcame that and got to a place where that was a no-brainer, that God, being who He is His desire is to constantly grow us from faith to faith, from grace to grace, from situation to situation. So I think that I'm learning to embrace that it is an ever-expanding stretching of my faith, of my will, of my sanity. Like, I don't know how much more insane I don't know how much longer I can hold off the insanity, but it's a constant stretching, and I think that's been key, certainly for me. As much as it still hurts, and you still freak out, you still pray and fast and sweat and do last-minute fundraisers and try to work. I mean, you still do everything you got to do, but I think over time you've got this very small growing of faith that it really it's going to be okay, But we've got some new leaders on a campus here, and they have an insanely high overhead budget for staffing. Some of our sites can utilize volunteers to a high degree when you're dealing with minors and the state and licensing and contracts. Sometimes you just don't have that. Sometimes you just don't have that luxury, and so this is one of those situations that you've just got to pay people to make census and to keep ratios right. And so what we're going to do when I work with this group over here today is they feel like they have 4 months worth of cash in the bank to continue operating, and so they're running at about $150,000 to $180,000 a month. $150,000 to $180,000 a month. Thank you, Jesus, that it's been happening for 10 years. But and so they've got a few $100,000 in the bank. We're heading into summer. This is summertime here in Phoenix. So two things are going to happen. Bills are going to nearly double, like 75% higher. Major donors, major supporters are gone because kids are out for the summer for school, and everybody who's got a second house up north or somewhere else, they're going to that house for these 120 degree days. And incidents are always higher. Temperatures rise, and it seems like so do incidents and tempers and everything else. So there's no foreseeable turnaround in the situation. So what we're going to do, though, what I found is one of the things that really does help you as a director, as a leader, to make this decision, along with the faith and the prayer. So, given that, like let's presume that's happening, right? So that's happening. We've been praying, we've been interceding, and this is a believing group, so they're not relying on themselves, but we have a role, right? I think especially with finances as stewards, it's so often depicted as stewards. We have a unique and a high-profile role to do the right thing. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through their finances. We have the luxury at this site to have 10 years worth of historical bills and things. If you don't have that, then you can do it off of not even having a year's worth of bills and just estimates from electric bills and things like that. But what we're going to produce is what we call a burn rate. And so a burn rate essentially is an Excel document that as best you can, so this is beyond budgets and beyond things, as best you can really forecast how fast you're going to burn through your cash. That's what it is. It's a burn rate. And so sometimes your burn rate is 6 months, and sometimes it's a year. It's barring any unforeseen emergencies and things. So for this group, their current burn rate, they feel, is 4 months, and during that time they don't see any real spikes in revenue, and so their fear a little bit is, should we be, that's a question to me, should we be making some summertime cuts? Should we cut back on some things? Of course, we've got to look at that. But their added fear is that their revenue side is, like I said, it's not going to be good the next few months because it's summertime. So we're going to try to produce a burn rate that is the best that we can come up with, the best scenario we can come up with, not so that we can sit back and say, okay, well that's what it is. We're just going to wait 4 months, see what happens, but so that we can just make strategic decisions based on that. I found that most of the time you end up better than what you feel you are, because the old enemy has a way to kind of stir you up and get you thinking things. And I know for me, the big thing is I just start thinking about my people, my employees, and I mean it's a ministry to have them on your team, and you love them, and you know their kids and their family, and you got boundaries, you got separation as a leader, but man, you love people. They're there following God and His calling, and you've got a responsibility in this, and they're just plugging away doing their thing. Aside from the development team, no one else is really responsible for making sure there's revenue than you, and it's part of your responsibility. So in this burn rate, it's an Excel document. Like I said, there are programs out there that'll do this for you, and we have those programs. We have Salesforce and Blackbaud and all the different things, and they can do some of this. But what I found is, as simply as you can pull it out and make it, you can use Google Docs if you don't have Excel. But you just do a basic Excel document. We've got one called cash flow statement on our chip that you can get. And so what we do is, we at the top part of it, we take about 10 or 12 rows. We really try to keep it simple, and we just put in the expenses. And so your known expenses, you do then on the columns, you do months. So we're going to do June, July, August, September, a 4-month sort of a cash flow analysis. And we're going to put in the bills that are there. And we don't, detail out phone and all that. We just put utilities, and it's going to cost this in June. It's going to cost this in July. It's going to cost this. And again, we base it on historical at this site. But if you don't have historical, you base it on your very best estimate, and be conservative. Like, you don't want to short it and then have a false sense of hope. And then on the next part of the row, so you have a couple spaces, you'll total that out, you have a couple spaces, and then you put in an income category. Sometimes we'll put the income side on the top, the revenue side. And at this particular site, we do have a pretty good handle on what the revenue is because we're billing the state for services. At the main campus in Phoenix here, it's almost all donations. It's mostly financial donations. And so we've got a few regulars that are can be a part of that formula, but a lot of it is unknown, or a lot of it is based on historical, like what happened last year. But you get the data on there, so you get the projected income for those 4 months. You get the projected bills for those 4 months, and you look down at the bottom. It's A minus B equals C, and that's where you're at. So part of your rolling formula at the bottom then is you have a cell that has your starting bank account balance, and then you add your income to that, and then subtract your expenses, and then that goes up into the next cell. It makes sense when you look at it, and then that becomes part of the next month. That's what you start with next month, and you look at that, and that's what we're going to do today. So today, the next thing you have to do then is, if that looks good, then it looks good. You can do that. You can extend this out as far as you want. We found that, boy, you get much more than a quarter of a year or a half a year, and you get into weird cycles, like you get into summertime, and that really doesn't. Those bills for us in Phoenix don't really mix with springtime bills, and you get into the fall and you get into the big donor campaign, and that kind of looks unhealthy. It looks unhealthy because you don't have that fall fundraising all year long, and so you do the best you can. But I found that 4-month chunks are usually the most accurate, and within 4 months you can really turn things around. And so that's where we're at today. So what we're going to look at today then, though, is you have two choices. You either obviously need to increase the revenue side, or decrease the expenses side, or both. And so once you have it on one document, this is why I encourage, there are amazing systems out there for accounting. We use one that produces beautiful charts for us and dashboards, and it's called Martis, and it feeds from our other stuff. It's beautiful and it's amazing. The problem is, very rarely does it put it all in one understandable sheet for you. And so we always end up with these cash flow documents. And so those are your two choices. You need to increase revenue, obviously, or decrease expenses. And so today, our first step, as we're heading into summer, their big dilemma is some girls are running from one part of the campus. They're high runners. They're girls just rescued out of trafficking. They still have the trauma bond, and so they're high run risks. And that particular part of the campus has no security team, so there's no real deterrent for the girls not to run. And so the question we're trying to face today is, we've only got 4 months worth of operating monies, and one of the ways to increase revenue is to help the girls stay. But in order to do that, it's going to cost money to have the security team to get there. And we think we can get some security work donated, but you can think in one hand and wish in the other. And if what ifs and could have beens were lollipops and rainbows, I'd be riding in the carpool lane over there. It just doesn't happen. It doesn't pay your bills, and so you got to do the hard stuff sometimes. But if you've got 4 months to plan on that hard stuff, it's much easier to do and much easier to receive for all your people. So what we're looking at today is we've got one person who's retiring and moving on, and so her income is not going to be part of it. So we're going to ask ourselves, well, can we not hire for her position for 6 months? So I mean, that decision alone boosts us nearly $6,000 a month, which is huge for this budget. They're I think in the summer $180,000, so we're not doing half the budget or anything, but it's pretty huge for us. Some other things we can cut back on, but just that $6,000 we're looking at. We can hire a couple part-time security people as a deterrent. That'll keep more girls there, which will keep the revenue flowing. By the way, I'm sorry if I'm coming across just talking to business. We care about all the people that we serve. We absolutely do. But honestly, if we're not able to pay bills and pay people, there is no program, and there is no helping people if we don't make good business, sound decisions. And so sometimes your mind just has to to shift into another gear, into another mode, where you're driven sometimes by your heart and your passion and your care, your compassion for people, but sometimes, and this is one of those times, you got to shift into, hey, it's time. Like, we got to do something, and you got to be that person to do it, to tighten the belt, to do stuff. So we think there's another roughly $10,000 a month to play with in this whole staffing arena. There's a couple positions that during summertime the girls are not in school, and so there's a school coordinator, and so it's like, she's semi-retired anyway. Can we talk to her about like a voluntary time off, just even for 2 months or 3 months while the girls aren't in school? And so we think we can get to about $10,000 in savings. So that alone stretches us another 3 weeks, almost a month, in our 4 month sort of progress. Combine that then with part of my meeting then is with the operation team, and then also with the development team. And so at this particular site, our donation cycles are very much tied to the holiday schedules. And so whereas our Phoenix site, we're constantly raising money. I feel a little bad about it, but we're sending out letters every month and emails every couple of weeks, and we're just like, we're nice about it, I think, but we're like, hey, we're honest. Like, we got bills to pay, and we want to help people. We want to help more people. Like, we need, and the people who are trying to help people need your help. So, but this site has an incredibly, because they survive mostly off of the billing from the state and insurance systems, their fundraising and development team, which is amazing, by the way, like $1 million plus a year fundraising, it's an amazing team. But they typically don't have a geared up summer ask, and so it is a challenge because a lot of your base is gone. But that's one of our options today. Now, we recognize that if we begin a monthly, really a big campaign to this base who's not used to hearing from us every month, we think they'll respond because they'll know that, okay, something must be going on. They need our help. And sometimes you can get too whiny and too crybaby, and you just turn your donors off, and they're like, oh my gosh, like they can't even afford $500 for this. Like, what, how much longer are they going to be in business? Your long-termers don't think that, but some of your shorter-termers do. So you don't want to put that vibe out there. But what we're faced with is, if we start a monthly campaign, we know it'll bring in, maybe another 150, 200,000. We believe that's what God's put in our heart, and that's what we believe this base can do over the course of these 4 months, and that stretches us then another 4 months, 3.5, 4 months. So with the cutbacks, we might gain a month, and then with an extended campaign. The challenge, though, is that with the cutbacks, other people are going to have to share the load, and they'll be doing more hours, and that could mean some overtime. So you got to be careful there. Excuse me. And then with the challenge with the fundraising is if we really tap our base now during the summertime, are they going to give less at year end? And so are we just moving money from the year end campaign into the summer for the sake of this? And so what the cash flow analysis and the burn rate is going to tell us is, okay, how serious really is it? Is it serious enough that we need to do both? We need to do the cutbacks, and we need to do the extended or the preemptive fundraising campaign. Right now, it's just kind of an emotional decision. We're like, gosh, it feels like the money's going, and we're making bank transfers, and salary's coming up again, and holy cow, like, we got to do this. But if we can get those numbers out and make sure everyone stays within their budget, or cuts their budget back for spending different things, and supplies and things. And of course, we're having the conversation today with the donation team and the volunteer coordinator team to step it up. This is summer, and we know people are out and gone, but well, we gotta step it up and do some more. So that's where we're going. I'll say that it's a whole lot easier to do this your 10th year than it is your first year. Boy, I remember my first year at the Phoenix campus here. Like, I literally got hired, I came off the mission field, and they had already started the Dream Center. I was overseas, and they brought me on to help with the business and the finances. And a month after I got hired, I was called over to the church by a gentleman who I love, and he's become a mentor and a friend. But he sat me down and he said, "Well, kiddo, you're out of money. The Dream Center has no money, and we need to talk about what you're going to do." And my first thought was, like, am I getting fired? Like, I just started. I've gotten one paycheck. Like, what's going on here? But those are tough stuff. At the time, we fell back on the church, and then I had to pay them back, which we paid them back. But it was tough stuff, man. Like, it was horrifying. I didn't have cash flow analysis at the time. I didn't have burn rate. We weren't using these things. We just were emotionally managing it. So it takes time to sit down and really go through everything, but you'll find that it's well worth it in the end. So pray for me as I pray for you, that when you have these financial challenges, that you'll have the wisdom and the discipline and the heart to do the hard thing, and the mind and the wisdom to know what the right thing to do is. So we're praying for this team over here. I believe that it's workable, but it is not going to be without some really, really tough decisions. And so I think the balance that you need to find, and that we're always striving to find, is, okay, God, we have all faith and we believe, and we're putting it all in your hands, except the part that you expect us to do. And we're going to do that to the best of our ability and with everything we can. And sometimes that means we don't even know where payroll is going to come from this month. But God, we trust you. It's going to work out. But boy, Jesus, help us. Help us, Lord. Amen. I hope this has been good for you guys. Bottom line, work with tools that will give you very clear, objective data that you can make rational decisions on. Don't just look at the bottom bank account balance and all the checks going out. Get it all in a cash flow summary, 4 months out projections, and make some real thoughtful, wise decisions based on that. God bless you guys. Hope it's been helpful.